So you've managed to put your little kit together. You've recovered a set of slats from a recovered pallet to form your bed base or your bed platform. You've got your little toolkit and you've got your luggage. You've driven off to the nearest recreation area, camping spot, even a roadside car park, truck stop, wherever you've decided to get to for the night, and you're now setting up. So simply take out all your luggage that you've got and start constructing your bed base. So you can see the way that I've cut all this is just the long pieces are exactly the length that the pallet came in, and it just so happens to fit nicely across the back of the vehicle. That's probably going to be the case with most pallets because they're all a standard sort of a size. I think it's something like 1200 millimeters, something like that. Not sure, but it's just over a meter. So, the bigger the vehicle, the more room you've got and the more space you can fit. The shorter pieces at the bottom there are that second pallet that I used just for the make up the length for the feet. In actual fact, I broke a couple of pieces from the original pallet, and if I hadn't have broken those or split them, that one pallet would have been enough. And remember, inside the pallet, there's thicker pieces, and I use those for the supports for underneath. Now remember, the whole point to this is to level out the floor for the bed. Your vehicle, I'm going to show a more detailed version of this later and explain what the problem is for most vehicles. So there's a little bit of a slant. The rear cargo area is usually fairly flat and fairly level. But once the seats fold down, depending on the manufacturer, the seats fold with a slight angle, and the angle's up towards the front of the vehicle usually. Now, as you can see here, I've got a flat floor. They've made it relatively flat, but some older vehicles have a step up, and sometimes that step up is quite large. It can be between 10 and 15 centimeters, depending on how old the vehicle is. But most modern ones, it's under 10 centimeters. But it still adds a little bit more of an angle than is comfortable to sleep on. You can do it. You can sleep on those unlevel sections. I've even parked a vehicle on a slope downhill, and that sort of made it up a little bit, but it's still just an awkward sort of a sleep for that one night. So that's the whole idea of setting up this pallet is to level out the floor. So in this case, I've got the long lengths and I've just laid them out towards the front of the vehicle, and basically the front end will sit on the edge of the seat that's laid down, and I've put it up just short of the front passenger seat on the left. You can take it all the way to the length, and if you're taller, you can move that seat forward. I've got that seat sort of at the halfway point, and you can get an extra almost 30 centimeters, so you can change in this particular car in this particular spot, but it's kind of average, is you can change a spot that's okay for someone that's just over 5 feet into something that a 6 foot person can stretch out in. It's still a tight fit for people that are over 6 foot, but that's sort of just the way it is. You can manage it by laying the seat forward or tilting it forward and just raising the platform, and you can get extra height and length out of that, and it also gives you more storage space underneath your pallet. So here are the supports that I've used. Again, all that material came from that one pallet, and I've just cut the supports to length to fit the width of the bed platform. So you can see I've got those. They're just sitting on the floor. They could roll and rock forward if you moved around too much. But that's the idea with the storage. If you put things under there, you put your shoes, a small backpack, a day bag, your toiletries, things like that. It'll stop the supports from rolling or moving forward that much. If you look really closely, you'll notice some fabric. It's just some Hessian webbing that I've got that I've stapled in, so that I've made like a concertina for the bed base. And I was going to use the duct tape for that. So you can use some pretty good strong duct tape to keep it there, and you can just roll it all up and fold it up into one spot, and it stops it from splitting apart as well, so you don't sort of have a ridgy or a lumpy sort of bed. And now just simply start dressing up your bed. So I've got the slats. I've just added a cheap picnic blanket, sits over the top, just to stop any splinters from the weathered wood. Remember, the pallets can be outside for days or weeks or months or whatever, so they're just subject to any weather, and they can start to warp and split and all that sort of thing. So it's not perfect. So yeah, just to protect your inflatable insulation mats, put something down. So this is the bed starting to take form. I've got the picnic blanket down and the closed cell foam insulation pad. That's a standard length insulation pad. So if you can fit on those, then you should be able to fit in this vehicle. So I've basically set this up similar to how I just slept with my hiking experience on ordinary through hikes and backpacking trips in the mountains or wherever. Usually at most you've just got a closed cell foam mat like the green one that I've got there, and you might have an inflatable insulation pad. So this is based on all of that. So of course, if you want it to be more comfortable, you'll have to buy a little bit more equipment. But this inflatable insulation pad goes to about 50 millimeters. It's not much, but it takes the edge off, and you're on a flat surface, so it's better than you would have in any tent or camping scenario. Now, I do recommend going and getting other mattresses, especially if you're going to be doing more than a couple of nights or a week or something like that. If you're doing long extended trips for weeks and weeks on end, definitely get some sort of mattress. Now, you can just get a normal foam mattress that could be 50, 60, 70 millimeters is sort of the standard. You can get thicker ones that are 80 and 90 millimeters, but they just depends on your budget and the space and all of that sort of stuff. So measure up the size you want, the length and the width. Work out what height works for you and the comfort level you want. Now that's just for ordinary foam. If you get a memory foam one, remember those are a little bit heavier, but they're a lot more comfortable. And yeah, you'll see one that I might add a little bit later, but for now, this is just the for the scenario. You've arrived, it's your first night in, and you camped overnight. So again, the basics of bedding. I always have a sleeping bag liner. Sleeping bag liners help with, keeping your sleeping bag a little bit tidier and cleaner and less manky over long periods of use. You just use the sleeping bag liner, wash that, and you have nice, fresh smelling sleeping bag. So this one's just cotton. Really good ones for remote hiking, especially in cooler climates. Get a silk one. They're a little bit more expensive, but they literally add about 2 degrees Celsius to your sleeping bag temperature rating. For example, I've had -10, -15 rated sleeping bags, had a full length silk sleeping bag liner, and that kept me toasty in all sorts of remote adventures. But for now, just in car camping, I prefer the comfort of a cotton one. The cotton one doesn't roll up or fold up as small as the silk, and that's the benefit of the silk sleeping bag liners. The silk sleeping bag liners roll up to something like, a pair of thick socks at worst. So, that rolls up quite small, whereas the cotton ones don't fold up as tightly. So that just adds a little bit of extra comfort. And of course, in summer, that's pretty much all you'll need. Keeps the bugs away, and it's comfortable. This one I actually made myself. I think I mentioned before, I made it up out of, there was a local bedding sheet manufacturer in where I lived, and they sold offcuts, and you could get the offcuts literally by the kilometre. It was anything up to 35, 45 millimetre offcuts. So yeah, you could get in the lengths you wanted. So as long as you're happy to sew 30 to 40 centimetre strips, you could sew anything. It was great for quilting, all those sorts of things, but that's a whole other story. And here's the final setup. So this is a 0 rated bag. It's just a fairly cheap one that I've bought literally from a variety store here in Australia. I think I got this from Big W. They're fairly inexpensive, and yeah, this is the setup we've got. Now, as far as temperature rating goes, at the time of this shooting, this was just coming towards the end of summer, so a 0 rated bag and a sleeping bag liner is more than enough for comfort levels and temperature. The location out here where this was taken, the nights, even in summer, can get quite cool. So think like edge of deserts, where during the day you can get 30 plus degrees, and then overnight it's like 7 or 8, 9 degrees at night, and that's even in the middle of summer. So yeah, so always keep in mind that some sort of sleeping cover, whether you choose a blanket, a lightweight sleeping bag, or whatever, yeah, that's just my personal preference. In those, just as a guide, for example, in those survivor shows, I would always include a sleeping bag. It doesn't matter where I was, where I went. For example, I've done some expeditions in tropical climates, and when it rains and it's windy in a tropical rainforest and you're all wet, sleeping bag, even a zero rated one, a 5 degree one, would is a lifesaver. Yeah, so yeah, I always carry at least a small sleeping bag that's rated between 0 or to 5 degrees Celsius. So you can see the luggage that I've brought. Again, this whole scenario, we've just got off a plane, we've got off a bus, we've got off whatever. We've picked up a vehicle and we've thrown it all in the back of your vehicle. So it all fits in there pretty well. Now, I've just got a pic here of the duffel that I have. Now, I prefer duffels to travel with, just a square sort of shape one. This one has wheels, so it's nice to carry around. You can load it up to the maximum weight, or if you're like me, you just pay the excess baggage weight and you can fit everything in there, especially if you've got camping gear. By the time you put, say for example, climbing gear, the weight adds up. So yeah, so that's why I've got this particular bag. Now, you can get a suitcase, but suitcases are bulky, and in this photo, I'm just showing that, your duffel can sort of fold up and pack sort of semi-flat. So that's the advantage with this, and it saves room. For example, that particular duffel could fit underneath the foot storage area of this pallet. So here's a shot showing how much room there is in this RAV4. The RAV4, as I've said before, was probably one of the smallest SUVs in its class as far as internal capacity. So, that's what I'm working with. But as you can see, the luggage that I travelled with, I wouldn't travel with much more these days. Even international is two checked in and one carry on, and that's as much as you sort of need. Obviously, that's up to you. You can even travel with less. There is a theory that you'd travel with one day bag with your essentials and then just buy everything in country. But for example, in Australia, things cost a lot more than it would in most of Europe and especially the USA. And so, for example, uh, I wouldn't buy most of your gear in Australia because it's just too expensive. So bring as much as you can that you think you really want. Things like really good Gore-Tex gear, your lightweight tents, all those sorts of things, your hiking boots and things like that. But things like cheap coolers, cheap gear from variety stores, then that's just they're much of a muchness. So yeah, so you've got here. I've got the two checked in bags and one carry on, and it all fits in quite easily. So again, the RAV4, even though it's small, here's like I've got one of the 60/40 split seats in the upright position. It's the 40 split seat, so the smaller of the two. So I've got my bed on the wider section, and the bed fits in there nicely. You can see that the tool bag, the bow saw, and the luggage that I've got even fits behind the passenger seat. So you've got your bed there, and you've got your seat that you can sit in to eat, to read, to use your computer, do some work, that sort of thing. There's a side shot just showing the seat in the upright position. You've got plenty of space, lots of room to do what you need to do. You could fold your bedding up and use the platform to cook on, sitting side saddle. You could even use it as a desk, but that would be uncomfortable. But yeah, so you've got plenty of options. Roll up your bed and you've got plenty of workspace. So here's the side view again, showing how much room you've got. You can see the driver's seat here in this case on the right hand side. That's in my normal driving position. So it's sort of in the mid range there. So you've still got plenty of room to sit, use your computer and do all that sort of stuff. So just to show a little bit of extra room there, I've got one of my plans is that I want to be able to have the driver's seat so that I can lay it back to its full position, so that I can have naps on the side of the road, so I don't have to get in and out, reset my bed, anything like that. So you can have your 10, 20 minute, 40-minute nap, whatever, on the side of the road and continue on. So again, here's me sitting in the passenger seat in the rear next to the bed that's all set up and ready to go. My legs are fully extended there. Again, I'm a shorty, so if you're 6 foot or something, you've still got plenty. Your knees wouldn't hit the rear seat there, and that's in the halfway position. If you're tall, you just move the seat even further forward, and you'd have plenty of room. Here's the example again. My driver's seat is still in the halfway position. My left arm is extended as far forward as I can reach, so it just touches the rear of the seat. And my laptop bag, which is bigger than the laptop, is sitting on my lap, and I've still got room to spare. So, when you've got the screen folded up, you've got room. And if you're really tall, just push the driver's seat forward and you'd just be able to fit in there. So that's an explanation of the sleeping platform night 1, the start of your travels. So you've got your car together, you've got your bed ready, and you're off and ready to go. And that's how it all looks on your first night of arrival.